Hi RStudio friends, and welcome back to Jordy's YouTube RStudio series. Note that I'm thinking of putting my videos on either TikTok or Twitch as well as YouTube. I'm not sure which one of those might be best for these kind of videos because I am still wanting to keep the relatively long format. As in 30 minutes to 40 minutes, sometimes 20, instead of like short videos. For now, that might change in the future, but if any of you have suggestions about whether Twitch, TikTok, or another platform would be good for this kind of stuff, please let me know. What I'd like to do today is R Markdown, and R Markdown, as you might be aware, is for generally for submitting reports that contain R code. You might have either used it yourself or heard about it. Generally, in my background, I've mostly used R scripts, but I do like the idea of submitting assignments and reports as R Markdown. So that's a different file type. If we pull up I've already done it. If we pull up the script that I wrote last time to make pie charts, okay, that was in an R script, which is file, new file, R script, this kind of file type. The symbol that's shown here is like a little white bit of paper and the letter R in blue, okay, blue symbol. To open up a new R Markdown document, we go into File, New File, R Markdown. Okay, and this, once it's shown, will appear as a new tab in the source pane with this red symbol instead of the blue symbol. When you open up or create a new R Markdown document, we get this screen. And this screen allows us to give the report a name. Okay. I'm just going to call it Jordy's report for now, as well as the author and the date. I often put tick next to use current date when rendering document, just so that it always uses the date of today. Then you have output format, and this gets to the value of R Markdown. You can output the report that we're about to write using our R code as three file types. HTML, which means that it's going to show up in the browser, okay, like a Chrome browser, or Edge, or Firefox, or whatever. Or PDF, which means it will be a PDF document, or Word. Now, one of the advantages of writing a report in R Markdown is that you don't have to use Word or PDF. So that's why I like to put it as a HTML. And then if you wanted to, you could go into the browser and print as a PDF if you wanted to. Out of PDF or Word, I'd probably use PDF. But for now, let's do HTML. Okay, so we click OK. When you do that, the kind of like default template for R Markdown as written by the developers appears on the screen. And this is mostly used for educational purposes. The section that you see at the top is the information that we just put in the boxes there, the title, author, and date. You've got this strange sort of appearance here, and each of this one here, and this one here are kind of a slightly different color of blue, right, than the rest of the document. These are the chunks. And it's in these chunks that we would copy paste codes from our script directly into these chunks. And then that will do the thing that the script is doing. Okay, so if we copy pasted this bar chart into one of these chunks, then ultimately the report will show that chart. Some people do directly code into R Markdown instead of the script, That's not my preferred way of doing it, because for total beginners, some of this might look a bit like, what's even going on here? Whereas if you are a beginner, opening up an entirely new script with nothing in it is probably the best way to start. I think as well that the error messages, when you if you have errors and you run the codes from a script, the console can kind of give clearer error messages if a script is used compared to an R Markdown. So I generally only use R Markdown to copy and paste stuff that I'm happy about into these chunks. We'll talk more about these chunks in a second, but this, as I said, is where your code will go. Okay? All of this stuff in the background that is outside of these chunks, chunk, with stuff written in between, all of this is the actual writing of your report. Okay? This is where you can write whatever you like. Okay, so in that way, this would just be what you would typically write in Microsoft Word. One of there's many advantages of using R Markdown. One of them is ease of use, I would say, but it kind of can organize itself. If we add a little bit more to this top section here, we can really make the document look very organized. Maybe even more organized than you can do in Word. We would have to add to this line here in order to make things like a table of contents. We could also change the color scheme in this line here using theme, but we'll get to that in a second. As I mentioned, we want to talk a little bit more about the individual chunks. And this is probably a good place to show what happens when we click this blue button, okay? First, when we click this blue button, it's going to ask us to save the R Markdown. So I would just call it Jordy's RMD, stands for R Markdown. Then it's going to do something that we haven't seen happen before in an R script, which is knit it, and knit is this symbol here, and it's going to knit the report as it is into this area here, which is the viewer tab, and the report's going to show up. This is the default template for an R Markdown without much customization done in it. The plot that the developers have shown to present here is just base R plot using the word plot brackets pressure, the name of the data frame, and that's a data frame that is in base R, I think, because we haven't had to load any libraries or anything, and this has been able to show. Just in the same way as as in an R script, if you are going to make a ggplot2 graph, you would have to use ggplot2 or tidyverse, and you would have to have that library loaded. You can add libraries and load libraries within this top chunk here. Okay, so really anything that appears in your R script should appear in here and in the other chunks as well. Let's think. Okay, so I forgot to mention there the reason that this shows up in the viewer tab for me, which I like incidentally because I can have a quick glance at how the report is looking. Looks okay, could be better. But that's because I've set that in the Tools Global Options. And if you go into Tools Global Options, you go into R Markdown here, you have an option saying Show Output Preview in a drop-down menu. The default is Window, and that will open this report in another window, and I don't really like that. I like it to open in RStudio, so we're all looking at the same place at the same time. So that's viewer pane to make that happen. Of course, in this in this R Markdown options, we have things like soft wrap the source files, or the files, just as we did in code, okay, and in general. Yeah, so we generally like to show all the text on the screen at one time, instead of have a scroll bar that scrolls left and right to find code or text that we're looking for. It just makes it easier to work with, in my opinion. And what happens when we knit that using this blue symbol here, okay, is that it has now saved not only the RMD file into the working directory that we've set, and feel free to go back to one of my first videos in the series if you don't know how to set the working directory, but it's also put this one here, and this is the HTML document, and we can view that on Chrome or Edge or Firefox. As I said, one option to get this in a PDF format even from here is to do these three dots here, print, then print Microsoft Print to PDF. You select where you want to put it on the computer and put it there. This might not look as nice as if we'd taken it and put it as a PDF directly from R and RStudio, but it is an option. Now this document and the kind of like template that was provided to us, you know, when we opened up a new file, shows some of the kind of things that we have talked about in previous sessions, such as making plots, albeit this is just base R and not ggplot2, and creating summaries. And summary in the name of the data frame is code that I use a lot, as is skim in the name of the data frame, and str in the name of the data frame, for general exploration of the data itself. So we've talked about how to get the report showing up in the viewer, how to get it into a HTML format, and how to get it into a PDF from that HTML format if that's the road we want to go in. What we need to do now is definitely think about how to make this document look nicer. Firstly, I would delete any of this stuff that is there just to show what you can do, and try to just have a few chunks for now. Okay, you can copy paste headers. Okay. At this point, I would say that note the color scheme and the highlighting for chunks and then the rest of the document is going to vary depending on what you've set in the Tools Global Options Appearance editor theme. Okay, so of course if we were to use a different color scheme, the chunks and the backgrounds will appear different colors. But as I said before, I kind of like the blue style, so that's why I use Cobalt or Solarized Dark. We can copy paste section headings, keep them with the 2 hashtags to make them bigger than the rest of the text, and we could do something else and call this section including models, for example, where we would plot model put model code into the chunks. To copy and paste chunks, we just copy paste lines 22 to 24, and we've pasted it below here to create a new chunk. Let's talk about chunks now, prior to making this document look a little bit nicer. So all chunks have the same kind of syntax involved for the first line and the last line. And that means that they all start on this 3 dashes and then squiggly brackets, the letter R, okay? And then a space. Don't change any of the things that I just said there, okay? If you were to try and delete one of those, it will stop being seen as a chunk. and then the thing could break when you try and run it. Okay, that's also going to mess things up here. If we were to delete this, it stops being a chunk. So if you want this to be treated as a chunk so that it will show things like graphs and tables and all the things that you want to show, you need to keep this style the same. If you delete anything, don't forget you can just copy paste a previous chunk and do it again. One thing that's important is that each one of these has a word after the R space, which is the name of the chunk. This one here is called cars, and this one here was called pressure. Note that when you give these names, these chunks names, they need to be unique names. Okay, so you can have any name you like, and they can have spaces between them. Okay, but do not duplicate the same name for two separate chunks, because that also causes an error. Try and knit it now, we'll see what happens. Yeah, execution has been halted. Duplicate chunk label. So they each need to be called unique names, part 1, part 2, for example. Or even better than that, use the kind of names that were used before, which are actually relevant to the thing that's being shown here. You could call, like for example, we could make both of this relating to the cars data frame, again, part of R. But we can call this one table of cars. More comprehensive is better. Just to keep track of what you've done and make more sense of it if you were to come back to it in the future. We have to constantly re-knit it every time. Things will not update automatically. And we now, for example, have better names in here. I'm going to probably delete this chunk here, because we don't want to be looking at too many data frames in one document, at least for now. What I'll do in a minute is I'll take stuff from the pie chart work last week and stick it in these chunks. But prior to that, let's look at some of the other things you can change in this section here. Again, we talked about what these things are doing, what they're showing. They're showing this stuff here at the top. However, there is other stuff you can add, okay, to make it look nicer. I'm going to copy paste this from previous stuff, okay, into this line here. Okay, so that means that some things will be added. What are these things? This theme line is for changing the color of the headers. There is a pretty good website, okay, which is here. And I'll put this in the caption for the video. Okay, and this talks about all the different themes that you can put there to change the appearance of the document. This is pretty nice, huh? You can really make your R Markdown document, the report, look exactly as your preference. And you can do this using themes like this theme hipster. For now, I'm going to use the cerulean one. That's kind of straightforward. Some of those do require certain libraries to be loaded, so be aware of that. Cerulean is going to create blue font on the titles. Table of contents, that's TOC. I like to put that to true. That's going to create a table of contents at the top with hyperlinks, so that you can just click on it's going to show the different headers here, okay? R Markdown, including plots, including models, etc. And you can just click on those names and it will take you directly to that page. Something that's not particularly easy to do in Microsoft Word. And it's also really nice if your supervisor or anybody looking at your document wants to skip straight ahead to 52 or page 52 or page 105 without having to scroll all the way down there. Okay. So table of contents will allow them to do that. Number of sections will put numbers in front of the headers, so it would say 1 R Markdown. It could say 2 including plots. Whether it's going to show integers or decimals will depend on whether you have 1 hashtag or 2 hashtags. So we'll look at what that does in a second. And as I said, those numbers that are given here in the headers will be section numbers, and they will also show in the table of contents. Code folding hide. Okay, so that's useful, and I'm probably going to come back to this this next week as well. But you see in the default, where we didn't have anything like this, things like the code itself is being shown in the report. So plot cars is being shown. And you might not want that to be the case if you're just wanting to show a nice clean finished product of your graphs and you don't want to present the code. There are reasons why you would want to present the code for transparency, or if it's a statistics module or something like this, or for any teaching purpose. In that case, you can include code download being true, which would allow someone to download the exact R Markdown document to get the code themselves if they want to see the code. And in my PhD, I wasn't asked to submit code or anything like that, but I do really like the idea of doing so, because it shows that it's transparent, and it's if in papers, when we submit papers, your method section should be written in a way that allows someone to duplicate your project, then it really helps that they have the code as well, so that they can duplicate the code. And I like the idea of making codes and programming language, programming files available to people. So let's just knit this now and see what changes have been made. Okay, so the changes that have been made are as follows. Looking at the top right corner, we've got this code button, and we can download the RMD, right, so that they can get it this way, as well as the HTML or the PDF file that we saw in the browser and working directory earlier on. You can then click show all codes, and that can show it as well. Hide all code. I think that that's because of this. Let me knit it again and check. Yes, it is. So this box here will show all the options that you've set as being relevant in code folding and code download. Then we obviously, because we had code folding hide, these things here that said summary cars and plot cars have been hidden by default unless we manually show them clicking the buttons above each section, okay? The various chunks which are now presented as a table and as a graph. These have been numbered 1 and 2 because these are section headings, and we've combined that with TOC being true. These 1 and 2 have been shown now in the table of contents, and clicking on them will take you to that. Okay, so we have a very short document right now, but you can still see that when I click 2, it scrolls down to this. If that was page 52, it would take you to page 52. Okay, so the hashtag thing I was talking about. You've got 2 hashtags shown in the kind of template document. What you can do, because these will show section 1 and 2, providing that the number of hashtags is the same. If you want to have subsections, what you can do is you can put 3 hashtags. Okay, and let's see what change that makes. Yeah, so now we have a 2.1, which is slightly smaller font, and it's appeared here under section 2. So think of 2 hashtags useful for your main 1s and 2s, 3 useful for 1.1 and 2.1. Let's put these as subsection 1 and subsection 2. Section 1.1, section 2.1. Let's see what happens now if we were to copy paste this and try this new subsection here. Is it going to do 1.2 if we have the same number of hashtags? What do you think? Yes, it's going to do subsection 1.2. If you have a big report, subsections with decimals can be very useful. Okay, and any scientific paper would use this for different parts of the methods or different parts of the results or discussion. And this is probably a good point to start taking some of the pie chart stuff and putting it in there. And let's see, where are we? Okay, I'm going to start with the very top of the document. Any libraries can be put in here because this is our setup chunk. And think of this as the chunk where you can put anything that we've seen before which is relevant to the entire document and to the entire code more than anything. Okay, that would, if we make a model, which we might do in another session, we have already done that, but I'd like to make more models as well. This will show p-values in decimal format. Okay, options digits equals 2. That's good for tables to show 2 decimal places. And the other thing is that you can, this part's kind of interesting. Okay, this is where you can add extra stuff about warnings and messages. Now you know that, like, if we were to make a ggplot that has missing data in the console, if we run that from an R script in the console, that would give us warning messages that certain data were not shown or are not presented in the graph. You don't want that kind of stuff to appear in the final report, and so you can stop that from happening by writing warning equals false and or message equals false. The kind of things that will be hidden here will be, like I said, stuff that hasn't worked in a graph, but that the graph has been able to show. That's normally when there's missing data, or when data are hidden because you've set your scale x continuous or scale y continuous to numbers that do not contain the full data range. You know, like if you've got data that go from 10 to 50 but you on the y-axis, but you set your scale underscore y underscore continuous to be 20 to 50, some data from the entire data frame will not be shown, and that would give you a warning and or a message. Generally, make sure you're happy with your code before using R Markdown, in my opinion, because you don't want this to be filled with warning messages and other messages. Okay, so there's other stuff you can, let me just close this entitled free. There's other stuff we can talk about, such as this, and this is to bring in a picture. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this as, oh, so actually when I copy pasted that straight away, it treated it as a chunk. You can show figures here, And again, as before, any settings relating specifically to the figure can get put in the squiggly brackets, such as the figure height and the figure width. That is where we talk about including graphics. And the important thing to note here is that you're going to have to include the location on your computer. Okay, let's see if we've got a nice picture that we can use. I've got a thumbnail from the last session. Oh, which is this? Which is a picture of me stuck in motion next to a pie chart. For now, I'm just going to name it something a little bit simpler with the rename, and I'm just going to call this thumbnail. To get the location of this on your computer, right click on it, go to properties, and just copy and paste this location here. Okay, now this isn't the full name of the file because we also have to add thumbnail.png, but we'll do that in a second. So you want to copy and paste this into the quotation marks. Then you want to flip these back arrows into front arrows. And then you want to make sure you've done that in all the cases. And then finally we want to add the actual name of the file, which is thumbnail.png. This is probably a good time to re-knit it. If you're using R Markdown, you probably you'll probably get into the habit of constantly clicking the knit button after changes have been made. And that's another reason why I prefer an R script. Okay? Because if this was a very long document, you don't want to make the mistake of knitting the entire document at once, because that could take a long time to run. So here, let's knit it again. And we have this picture appearing here. It's already starting to look nicer, huh? Now let's take the pie chart graph. Well, we can't do that straight away because we've cleaned our data frame. We use diamonds incidentally, and we cleaned the data frame prior to making the graph, and we'll have to do that here as well. So I'm just now going to start getting rid of this old stuff from the template. I'm going to start calling this, I'll just call it pie chart project. Then I'm going to do a summary of diamonds here. Okay, it's probably better to call it summary of diamonds. Summary diamonds. That's a big data frame, so I could have chosen a much smaller one to work with. Let's just keep these in for now because we can add to them later. We will we'll probably paste this at any point kind of near here, but put it into a chunk, and this will be our cleaning chunk. Cleaning of diamonds. Hashtags within the chunks will be the same as note-taking in an R script. You don't need views, obviously, because views would show these up here if you run them from an R script. And we are making the assumption we've already worked through that stage by now. I'm going to then use this for my pie chart itself. I will leave these subsections just so that we can come back to them if we want to later on, but we might not. It's useful for bigger projects than what this will be. This is just a YouTube video. This is going to be R pie chart of diamonds. I'd like to get you guys into the habit of calling them comprehensive names rather than just R pie chart, because you might end up having a few that are pie charts. And we're going to take our pie chart, which started off as a bar chart but became a pie chart, and stick it here. And let's just turn this into 2 hashtags here and call it my picture. So from what I'm seeing, this all looks pretty good. We've gone through the setups chunk, we've gone through the summary chunk, we've gone through the cleaning chunk, and we've here created a pie chart chunk, and finally an image chunk. That's quite a lot of stuff for half an hour, and the real template for a pretty good R Markdown document. Fingers crossed at this point it will knit. And okay, there was a view in there that caused that table to show up. Okay, the first thing is that summary for diamonds is not particularly useful. It has everything worked, but we would probably not want to show this this kind of summary there. What we might want is in fact a data table. Okay, if we're going to use data table for diamonds to show a table of diamonds, we need the library dt, and we're going to put data table, all one word, diamonds. And that's going to create something that looks much nicer than this. It's actually going to be a table of the data rather than a summary of the data. Don't bother including view. You saw what happened there when I showed a view of the diamonds. Filter to data frame that had the filtering step of the cleaning. It popped up as a little pop-up. And we don't really need that, do we? We don't want any pop-ups sticking all over the screen. We want to focus on this section here. So let's knit it again after these small edits have been made. Okay, it seems your R data is too big. Okay. Warning. Let me just see why that warning came up, even though I had warning equals false here. My first idea is that we put warning here as well, and you can do that, see if that makes any difference. It did show the table, but it gave a warning that the data frame is too big. We wouldn't want to view the entire 50,000 rows anyway, so I'm not too bothered about that, but I don't want this warning to show up. The pie chart showed up, and my picture showed up. Probably we'll just check to see if that change with warning being added here as false, warning equals false here, has stopped that warning from showing. It has. Or has it? Yeah, it stopped it from showing there. So if that happens, put it into the chunk headings and not just the setup headings. For figure captions, which we definitely want, you have a couple of options, okay? So you could either just write directly underneath, like, here, to make it like main text, figure 1, okay, pie chart, figure 2, picture. You could just do that. And if you go down that road, it can be nice if you put 2, or is it 2? Yeah, 2 asterisks around it. That will, I believe, make it bold, to make the text stand out from the rest of the text that you would write around it. Okay, like for example, the main text will say figure 1 shows a pie chart, ... This has made it hopefully bold, and that will make it stand out as a caption. Let's knit this and see what happens. So this is one of the options for figure captions. Alright, so we're going to scroll down to the pie chart, and it has gone bold now here. The other option is that you put it in here in the header, fig.cap equals, and then in quotation marks just write what you want your caption to say. If we do it like that, so this would be figure 2, it should write a caption for us, but it won't put it in bold. And that's the second one here down at the bottom. It's put figure 2 underneath it. So really I would prefer this method with the asterisks around text and the text being written just in the background. I think that that's probably a pretty good point to call it. You can start, if you're interested in doing this, start taking anything that you've previously submitted as a Microsoft Word and put it into R Markdown. You might benefit from it further down the road in terms of saving subscription costs, as well as giving you nice design templates and ways to show things like table of contents, which might be difficult to do in Word. Everything that we can do in a script we can put here. And I will probably make another video on R Markdown where I play around with some more of these themes, and then potentially use that to talk about Shiny and to lead into Shiny apps. For now, I don't think that we need to spend too much more time on writing specific stuff within this, because anything we've done in a previous session could be used and copy pasted here. What you can do in an R script, you can do in this. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you're doing well with your projects or your interest in coding, and have a great day.